call the meeting of the Tuesday, August 15th, 2023 meeting of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Hartman,
Here.
Jensen,
Here.
McManus,
Here.
Solomon,
Here.
Stazen,
Here.
Zelmer,
Here.
The first item on the agenda is the...
Here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Phillips.
Phillips.
The first item on tonight's agenda is the appointment of a chairperson pro tem. Paul Zelmer is out of town on business and is joining us remotely. So is there a motion to, for chairperson pro tem?
Motion
For Lisa?
to approve Commissioner McManus.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and then we need to also have someone make a motion for Paul Zelmer to join us remotely. Yeah? Is that right?
Motion for Paul to join us remotely.
In a second?
Second.
All right, all those,
Didn't say all in favor.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is it?
No.
No?
That's it, the
Okay, that's it, all right. Okay, so next is the approval of minutes for July 18th, 2023. Are there any comments?
I do have a comment.
Yeah.
It is in regards to a statement that Al Watts made, so it's on page 2 of the minutes. I just need clarification on one thing as I was reading through the minutes, Al, so I'm sorry to ask. Can I ask him this directly, or do I just ask you? Okay, the question is, Mr. Watts continued by reading his statement that he prepared. He believes the site does meet requirements for demolition outlined in the city's ordinance. Is that a correct statement?
Oh, yes, please.
Al Watts with Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley. No, that is not correct. It's missing one word. It should say not. We do not believe that it meets the qualifications for demolition.
Okay, thank you, Al.
So we should not approve those meeting minutes, or?
change.
Or just subject to that particular change? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the minutes from July 18th with the change, as noted.
Motion made.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Or do we want to do a roll call?
Do a roll call.
Okay, we'll do a roll call then.
Hartman,
Aye. Is this for July 18th?
Right.
Not present.
Oh, then you would abstain.
Abstain.
Jensen,
Aye.
McManus,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Solomon,
Aye.
Stazen,
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye. Aye.
Okay.
Minutes are approved.
All right, yep, minutes are approved. So the next item on our agenda are deliberations, and our first case is at 4 East State Street, and it is an application for the demolition of a historic landmark and deed designation of the property as being a historic landmark. So I guess we don't have a staff intro to this one today, so we will just open this to commissioner discussion. Who would like to go first?
I would like to ask a few questions of staff. I would like to know whether just explain that the TIF district and what it means, and is this actual parcel within the TIF district, and what is the method of that a person goes about to get money from TIF districts?
So it sounds like, Paul, you're looking for Michael to explain the process for obtaining TIF district funds?
That's correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Zelmer, we do have a statement here from Kathleen Timoshenko, who is our Economic Development Director. I think this addresses part of your question, perhaps. The statement is, the applicant has not approached the city to propose a public-private partnership to retrofit the designated historic building and property. While demolition proceedings were underway, the applicant asked if $2 million was available in the TIF fund to provide necessary funding. In response, Shodin was advised that TIF funds could be dedicated to the preservation of the structure, for which use and in what amount had to be vetted and a recommendation forwarded to City Council. It was also pointed out to the applicant that a request for TIF funds to preserve the structure while demolition proceedings were underway were incongruent requests. If that does not fully answer your part of your question, I would turn it over to Community Development Director David DeGroot to elaborate more on TIF districts.
I guess I can confirm that the property is within the TIF district, TIF number 3, and that there are 7 goals and objectives within that redevelopment plan area. One of those goals and objectives includes the potential preservation of architecturally or historically significant buildings. So a TIF request to help preserve the structure would have been a valid request.
Would another valid request be to provide infrastructure for a project, a multi-use project on the remainder of the land?
There's a, yes, but there's a number of different eligible expenses within the TIF district.
Okay. Is a TIF district, and if you could just elaborate a little bit, why do we have a TIF district? Why is this a TIF district? Is it considered, I guess, why was a TIF district created for this? If you can answer that question.
I mean, I don't think I can answer that succinctly. We have an approved redevelopment plan that kind of outlines the qualifying factors that establish the TIF. It's available on the city's website. There are 7 objectives, again, to encourage redevelopment of underutilized sites, blighted sites, vacant properties, or, again, the preservation and reuse of historic buildings.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Did you have any other questions, Paul?
The other
Or any
question
statements or
that I
anything?
had to staff was, I read through the meeting minutes of I believe it was last month's meeting, and it stated something to the effect that a person other than the owner could not make a nomination for a nomination of a landmark within the city of Geneva. If you could explain what the ordinance was before this ordinance came through, saying that only people in Geneva can make that, make a designation or put forward a designation, an application for a designation of historic landmark status.
Sure, I'll take that, Paul. The statement, I think, was made that was before the ordinance was, the current ordinance was adopted in 2016, that a third party could not make nomination of a property in Geneva for historic landmark designation or historic district designation. I went back and looked at the pre-2016 ordinance, and that ordinance actually was a much broader application process. It would allow anybody in the United States to actually make application for historic properties. And the 2016 effort was actually to narrow that scope to requiring that you be a resident of Geneva, whether you're an individual resident or a member of an a resident member of an association, but that resident member had to live in Geneva. So what happened in 2016 was actually a narrowing of who could nominate a property for historic district designation.
I would add that prior to 2016, it was a simple majority vote to nominate without an owner's consent. And the current ordinance, it requires a 2/3 majority to nominate or designate a landmark over the owner's objection.
Okay, thank you.
Going back to Kathleen's statement, I think basically she said, presently you have a demolition request pending and you are requesting TIF funds to preserve the structure. These requests are incongruent. And then she went on to say, to pursue a TIF request to preserve the structure, the first step would be to withdraw the demolition request. I'm wondering if that was the end of the conversations with Shodine regarding TIF funds, and did they ever withdraw? They never withdrew their request, did they? Did they ever apply for the TIF?
Well, I think that's the purpose of this particular topic today, is the fact that they are looking for us to designate the historic space around the building so that it is eligible to be demolished. So that the fact that it still has that request to demo means that they haven't rescinded.
Right, I'm trying to get at or wonder, if they follow through on the city's instructions to them. Did they go ahead and withdraw? We know they didn't. The city asked them to withdraw their petition. They did not. What should have been the next step after that for Shodine?
But they did not withdraw the demolition request, so we proceeded with the demolition hearings that began in January. Under the Historic Preservation Ordinance, there are timelines once an application is filed, and part of the reason it was incongruent was that we had to proceed with the demolition hearings, and we could not advance a TIF request in that time frame.
If they had withdrawn it, what would be the process for them to apply for TIF assistance?
They would ask for a public-private partnership with our Economic Development Department, and they would vet that request and try to bring a redevelopment agreement forward to the city council for their consideration.
So is that filling out an application, or is that just a verbal request in a meeting, or how does that typically go down?
I can't speak for that process. I don't manage that
If I may
process.
interject, Kathleen did give me one more statement
Okay.
today. She said, at Geneva, the application process is tailored by staff based on project scope. However, the applicant has entered into several successful public-private projects with success and knows how to approach the city and understands the process. And that's where she said it kind of
Okay.
ended.
All right, so in her opinion, Chody knew how to go about getting TIF funds. They've done it before. They know the process.
That is what Kathleen's statement is. I read exactly what she gave me.
Okay. So basically, in my opinion, they obviously didn't withdraw their request. They forged ahead with, the requirement for a public meeting. They basically forced us into this deliberation, and they're the ones that caused the 9-month delay. If ultimately what they really wanted was TIF money, they basically went about it the wrong way, even though they knew how to do it. So I find that kind of, difficult to understand. And I know, there was some testimony from Mr. Petzel, in the last meeting where he said, in order to try to prevent demolition, they submitted a demolition permit, which, basically sounds a little backwards to me. He also said the reason we're asking for TIF assistance is so that we don't need a demolition permit. So, in my mind, apparently, based on those statements, Shodine doesn't really want to demolish the landmark structure. They basically just want TIF funds. So I know there's not a question in there, but that's just a statement of my interpretation of some of the testimony from last month.
Yeah, and I think we're just looking for feedback right now before we ever take a
Are
vote.
we deliberating now?
We are
on this?
deliberating right now. This is the public hearing was
Okay.
concluded at the end of the last meeting, and so now it's time for us to deliberate, and then we will take a vote today.
I have a quick question. If a demolition request is removed, what is the time frame for it to be reinstated if they don't get a answer that they like?
If it's withdrawn?
Yes.
If a request is withdrawn and there's no action taken, they can reapply at any time.
So it's no 1-year waiting period or cooling off period or whatever?
If there was no action taken, right, there's no
Okay.
cooling off period.
Anyone else have any comments on the topic? Jewel?
I do have a comment. It is not on TIF, though. It's just.
Sure, we're not, TIF is a sidebar to
Okay.
the ultimate topic, which is we are going to vote today on whether or not to de-designate the property and approve it for potential demolition.
Okay. Over the course of all of these hearings that we've had and all these meetings, I think it's important for all of us to remember when we make our final vote here is that we have been provided with several distractions that took away from the larger issue here as to what our job and responsibility is. So before we go to a vote, I think we really need to think about all the information that has presented that is meaningful to our decision. And based on the material that applies to the decision that we need to make, I think is going to help us in the direction as to if we approve or not approve of the requests at hand. So I just want us to remember that while we're voting, and also remember that part of our responsibility of being commissioners is that we need to take into account all of the community's comments. That's part of our responsibility. And a large percentage of the comments that came in were advocating for the preservation of the 1840 blacksmith shop. Not only from the community, but we had an outpour of also expert testimonies that supported the reason why that blacksmith shop should stay. So those are just an additional thought that I would just like to throw in before we make our final decision.
Thank you. George?
Well, I've been thinking about that, and this really goes back to the construction estimate. As you know, I'm an architect with structural expertise, and when I saw the numbers, obviously, they were pretty conservative on the construction side with design contingency, construction contingency, and all that. It inflated the numbers by 50%. But that really neither being here nor there, the condition of this structure currently is beyond, in my opinion, anyway, restoration. What would be done is some attempt to preserve it in some condition, but who knows what the original intent was, and given its age, has experienced so many additions and reconfigurations. I'm at a loss to understand what we're really trying to preserve here. So we'll have this box that we really don't have a function for either as of yet, and just for the sake of, and if you look at it now, it's not aesthetically the most pleasing thing I've ever seen. And I saw renderings of what could be, but, you know, one thing we go into in minutia on some of the historic residences is the preservation of materials, and we don't want a Disney-esque solution. So I'm at a loss architecturally to understand how we could preserve this structure, make it functional, for what purpose I don't know, and have some semblance of original materials to make it look like it's a preserved structure. I'm just completely at a loss on that one. I've been struggling with that from day one. And then we got into these pro formas on specific ways to possibly integrate the structure or not. To what end, I'm not sure either, because there didn't seem to be a consensus from either the Shodine side or our side, if that's what we wanted to do. So I don't know why we spent all that time debating pro formas on something that was highly conceptual. And we also spent a lot of money on that. So the question was raised, and I think a good one. I think we've lost focus on what the thing is. It's, are we going to demolish this thing, or give approval for demolition, or not? These other things seem to be endless meetings and distractions. So I would like to know, but you're right, though, there has to be a sensitivity from on the community side as to there is a concern about preserving what we have a lot of history, but not as much as we would like. So the question for me is, and I don't know if I can answer it, how do we preserve some semblance of heritage we have on this particular site and make it something that's either useful or aesthetically pleasing, other than just another little building that isn't going to look anything like what it was when it was originally built, and then we could say, oh yeah, but that's a real old structure. I don't buy that either. So I guess those are my concerns. And I would have and liked to see, from the get-go, a little bit more creativity on what you could really do with this thing. Everything now societally for us seems to be absolutes. It's either down or it's not.
Right.
And
I do feel like
where is the compromise on this is, how do we preserve what little history may be on that site, but to make it economically viable for development? And I've not seen one answer to that in all these meetings we've had. And so, I'd love to work from a clean site as well, but where's the challenge in that? I've worked on projects all over the world that had historic development, preservation in some of our developments. And, I've seen a lot of creative solutions, but quite frankly, right now, I'm underwhelmed. I haven't seen anything that, and so it makes it even more difficult to say yay or nay. But, and the last thing I think I want to do is extend these deliberations but I haven't seen anything yet that would be a viable compromise or just a plain good solution.
Well, and I think a lot of what we've seen thus far have been from people outside of the property owners themselves. We've yet to see the Shodine minds at work as it relates to this property, which is, for us as a commission, we're not here to tell you what to do with it. It's just what is going to happen with that property, and does it need to stay where it's at in order for you to deal with it, whether it's a structure where people are inhabiting it and it has the mechanicals and the drywall and the flooring and people go inside of it and occupy it, or is it 3 walls and a garden? Who knows what that structure ends up becoming.
But that's not for us to decide, and that's really not what we're
this
considering
commission's
at this
purpose.
Well,
point.
but we were considering pro formas, and
Right,
we were
because-
considering
And I felt like that was a lot of
other
noise,
stuff.
Because we have to consider all the potential options and
Right.
alternatives for
Well, we
development.
haven't considered all the potential
Well,
options then.
That's part of that consideration, I believe.
Hey,
I
George,
believe-
nothing has been brought up here to redevelop this project. All it's been brought up to is to tear it down. So that's why you're not seeing any creativity here.
Well, the
Because
pro forma and the
I don't-
estimates
that was-
were,
That was not a presentation as to what they would do to change the project. They came in here with a demolition request, not anything to rehab it, whatever. They never put in for a TIF request because they had a demolition request in there and they couldn't do both at the same time. So there was no creativity to look at here because there was none to be presented because they weren't presenting anything.
Well, TIF money does not formulate a solution. It's a funding
According
methodology,
to Chaudine,
not a
it does.
design solution.
Hey, George, this was a demolition request. This was not a request for a concept or anything like that. Even though the Chaudine organization stated in the Daily Herald back in 2014 that they were going to preserve this site, okay? And that was before it got landmark designated, okay? Up until that point, nothing was brought forward to preserve this site. In fact, when they exposed that site after they tore down the mill race inn, they did it great harm and injustice because they probably exposed it to, in a way, a form of demolition by neglect because it was left open to the elements for way too long, what a normal builder would never do. So I understand what you're saying, but this is not a proposal to redevelop this project. So there was nothing brought forward to you in any way of a creative idea because everything that came was from the outside, nothing from the people involved.
Well, then we spent 2 meetings for nothing regarding the pro forma, because that was all about development. There was no discussion in those 2 meetings with our consultants about demolition. It was all about financial feasibility for development.
What ifs?
Right.
And it was
And
what if
I think,
if there was TIF money involved.
I think Paul is trying to talk.
Yeah, I think, Lisa, you actually had the best point of what they were, when we brought that up about the project itself, because it ends up that the project per the pro forma isn't viable with the building preserved or without the building preserved. It doesn't really, it's not a viable project with or without the building being preserved.
Right.
It's only viable when you bring in TIF money to do the project, and that's probably one of the reasons it's in a TIF district. So it's a little bit disingenuous to think that we're gonna look at this without TIF money or any public partnership when it's in a TIF district for a reason, and the reason is it needs to be redeveloped and it's difficult to do.
And I think the report from Altus Works, which, Chaudine, asked them to produce that, showed that that building was able to be restored. They had a whole plan for restoring it as a standalone office. So it doesn't have to be a standalone office. It could be any kind of other structure, but it is restorable with the same materials that it's constructed with now. The stone can remain, it needs tuck pointing, et cetera, but it is restorable. It's just that I think both Chaudine and Tesca, after, going through all of that pro forma evaluation, their conclusions, they basically agreed that, restoration of that is possible when considered with a site-wide development and TIF funds that could be available in that instance. And that's part of the options, all of the options that need to be considered. That's part of what we have to consider.
The old construction mantra, right? Anything's possible if you put enough money into it.
But it's in a TIF district. I mean, we know from Mr. DeGroot that, that money could be available. There was money put as a line item into the cost associated with the building that came out of the charrette. It's not that the city won't provide money. It's just they need to have a proper application made to them for a site-wide development that would include restoration of that building so that they can get the TIF money to basically pay for that restoration and other infrastructure or other costs that are going to be associated with that site-wide development.
That's not what's on the table right now.
No, but we have to consider that as an alternative.
I think that it's not up for us to determine what they do or how they do it. I think what we need to assess is whether or not there are other alternate funding alternatives. Have they been exhausted? And in my opinion, they have not been exhausted because there is the potential for finding some funding that might come from
Right, and that's the
that
point,
district.
because that's an option that hasn't
But
been
but it's
considered.
not something that we necessarily need to determine for them.
No,
All we need
of
to
course
know
not.
Right.
is whether there is other avenues of funding and whether the potential
course.
ones have been exhausted.
I agree with
But
that.
we do need to go back to the city code, that's important, and we need to ask ourselves this question. Demolition shall be considered only when all other redevelopment options for a building, structure, object improvement, or site have been exhausted. That is the question that we have to ask ourselves right now. And we do have the tools, we do have the information, we do have the testimonies to answer that question.
Paul, were you going to say something?
I agree with what Joel has to say there. I think that that was the point of bringing Tesca in. I think it was most interesting that it's not a viable project unless TIF money is used in any way you look at it. And that's, I think it would be a disservice to the community, and it wouldn't follow what the public clearly wants if we were to allow demolition of this building, and it left it open that TIF money would be used to redevelop the site when they get around to doing it, or when they find the correct mix of what they want to do the development.
John? Thoughts?
I have no questions right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have one more statement, Lisa, I
Yeah.
think. And based on Shodine's creativity in preserving the heritage of the historic district and the community, they have the resources and the knowledge to create something that is both beneficial to them and to the community. That's just a statement that I want to get out there, that they have the knowledge, they have the resources, they have the background. It's just a matter of working together as a community and come up with a solution to this.
And if they have the will.
Anybody else have any thoughts? No? I myself just had two notes in my own, which was just the fact that no application for those TIF funds has ever been made to this point. And so I think that that is an avenue that probably needs to be explored before we would entertain that. And the other is both the pro formas and the responses to the pro formas. To me, it seemed like, and Paul brought this up not too long ago, but just the fact that there were two different scenarios side by side with the structure, without the structure, and the numbers didn't seem to read any that different from one another. So it wasn't presenting an undue additional hardship outside of the property, just being a challenge in and of itself. So those are my two thoughts. But it would be nice to see what Shodine would present on their own. There have been charrettes and things like that have been suggesting what can happen with the property that is essentially just not theirs to know what to do with. So it's great to see, but at the same time, it would be interesting to see what happens when Shodine presents something. Anyone else? Are we ready to? Yeah, if someone would like to make a motion to either approve.
I will, Lisa.
Yeah,
I'll make a motion.
would you, okay.
I move to deny the request for demolition and the de-designation of the historic landmark located at 4 East State Street.
I would second that.
Paul seconds it. Should we do a
Should we-
roll call?
Should we have a discussion at this point, just a
Oh,
brief?
Paul, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
Should we have a brief discussion during our voting, or is there?
Paul is asking whether we should,
Or just at least explain our,
do you feel like additional discussion is needed, Paul? I'm not
no,
typically
I
the chair.
just want to explain my vote before
Right.
I vote.
Oh, so you can explain your vote when you vote, is what you're saying?
I would like to do that as well.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, so we'll call roll, and then you can explain as you're rendering your decision.
Hartman,
Deny? I'm not sure exactly what I'm
So
answering.
you would, she moved to deny the request?
Yes.
And then someone seconded that, Paul seconded it, and now you're saying that you would say aye
Aye,
to that, to deny it?
to that request.
Okay. Do you have anything, any comments to make
Well,
on that, or anything?
I do have a few, limited. I know it's been a challenge on both sides. I'm certainly not a professional architect, engineer, designer. I did grow up my father was a land developer, home builder. I watched him go through this exact process in another town. I certainly understand the issues at hand, and, it's been a challenge for me personally, hearing community feedback, personal thoughts, and really what can be done with that property. And, that's just about all I wanted to say on that, is understanding both sides has been a challenge for me, and I'm sure everyone here.
Thank you.
Jensen,
Aye. And based on the information and the testimonies provided, I'm not convinced that the applicant has proven it to be a financial or economic hardship. The Tesca Associates and the Planera Group had provided a report that demonstrated a path for financial feasibility. Also, I'm not convinced the applicant has explored all other redevelopment options or investigated alternative funding sources.
Thank you.
McManus,
Aye. I just said it previously that, first off, we haven't explored all of our potential funding options, so I think that that's something that Shodi needs to try first before we approve this. And like George said, if we get to a point where, we've exhausted those options, then maybe this can be brought before us again, and we can reconsider that. But at this time, I do not think that we've done that. So I am voting yes.
Phillips,
I'm going to vote aye also, basically because the landmark structure is located on property in a TIF district, and all other development alternatives to make rehabilitation financially viable, for example, inclusion in a site-wide development project, have not been exhausted by Shodine. I would just comment also on a few other criteria that are listed in Ordinance 10610 that have not been met. Like I said previously, rehabilitation of the structure is technically feasible. It, in my mind, does not present a safety hazard. It's fenced, the windows are blocked, doors are blocked, et cetera. It's not a deterrent to a major improvement program for which planning, zoning, and funding has been secured, and demolition is not favored by a majority of the community. For all those reasons, I am voting aye.
Solomon,
I vote aye also. My points are that, I believe that, first of all, I think it's a great piece of property, and I understand thoroughly why the Shodines wanted to purchase it. I believe that as they started to get into this project, even though they stated in 2014 that they were going to preserve this structure, for the history of the city and such, that they realized quickly that that was something that they really probably in their heart didn't want to do. And so when the Mill Race Inn was torn down, they think in a way they left the old structure exposed, hoping for possibly some act of God or whatever to knock it down themselves and not have to go through this process. But at the same point, they have brought nothing forward to honestly want to redevelop the site and preserving that building. They have been half-hearted in their efforts here, which is also probably why that they never bothered to remove the demolition request to not even attempt to get TIF money, which has been clearly stated was available to them, even though that if the TIF didn't turn out the way they wanted it, they could reapply for the demolition, and at least showed in earnesty that they tried to do the right thing to preserve this facility and go through the proper process. Instead, they have just been, focused on tearing this building down and the hell with everything else. So as far as that's concerned, I feel that they were very disingenuous to their initial discussions where they said that they were going to preserve the structure. And as such, once again, I vote to deny their request.
So you're voting aye.
Aye.
Stason,
I also vote aye, but for entirely different reasons. Since image and character is part of our historic district, financing be damned at this point in time, I really want to see what we're going to wind up with. And creative solutions, in my mind, also are integration of some of the components into an entirely different structure. It could be some kind of landmark, monumental kind of preservation of part of it, but I don't think we've near exhausted all the talent and creativity that probably is available to make this a win-win for everyone. So at this point in time, I have to say the same thing. I would turn down demolition. It unfortunately, it's transcended a yes or no kind of thing because there's so many other components to this.
So the motion has passed? Oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
We got one more.
Yeah,
Sorry, Paul.
okay. Yeah, I would vote aye also, and as previously stated, I think it's clear that the public is in favor of saving the building from the testimony we've received, and I believe that since the parcel is in a TIF district and the size of the, it is, we haven't, not every reasonable alternative has been explored, so I don't believe it has at this point, so I don't think demolition is appropriate.
Okay. Is that everyone? Yeah, okay. All right, so the motion has passed, and to deny the demolition of a historic landmark and the de-designation of a historic landmark property at 4 East State Street.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Our next item is for a, 15 South 6th Street. It's the application for window replacement at a significant property. We have Mike Schmidt here, yes, there's Mike. And Joyce Courtney of the Home Court Real Estate, and Jen, not Jen? Okay, all right. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman Pro Tem. So the next case, as you said, is 15 South 6th Street. I will just identify where the project is located. It's in the northwest corner of the Central Geneva Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and on the far western edge of the local Geneva Historic District. As we mentioned last time, just to give a quick background in case somebody wasn't either watching or at this meeting last month, the building was built in 1892 and is the John and Sarah Donaldson House. This is a view from the northwest corner and also from the southwest corner looking at the property. A little bit of information and context just to also, there is a sister house to this. It's the 1892 Ellis House at 107 South 2nd Street. We know that house was moved and remodeled in 1925. And this afternoon, in looking at some other documents that I was able to locate, it appears that the subject house at 15 South 6th Street was likely remodeled with the dormers between 1922 and 1928. The existing conditions that are currently visible is some of the aluminum siding has been removed to expose the historic siding, and I bring that up because I know there are some questions about the siding and what's going to happen with it, but I do want to stress that the siding replacement has been taken off the table by the applicant. So as I mentioned, the siding has been removed from two sides of the front bay and one side of the porch. So you can see the two left images show the historic siding exposed, and the right side of the bay, that kind of obscured by the landscape, still has the aluminum siding on the building. And there were issues that weren't resolved or discussed, but the trim, part of it is wrapped with aluminum, part of it is not, and there's miscellaneous elements of the aluminum siding. So I know that at least one or two commissioners asked me what was the final resolution of the siding, especially at the street face. I know the applicant is requesting to retain the aluminum siding on the north, south, and east sides of the building as is. So if there are questions about siding, I'm hoping we can address those tonight, or yes, tonight. Again, the gable was exposed with this herringbone pattern of siding, but the attic gable window is also trimmed presently with aluminum encasement. The major issue before the commission tonight, or the primary issue that the application has been reduced to, is a request for replacement of windows. I've provided this key plan just to help everybody because the applicant has provided a plethora of photographs of the windows, and so to keep it clear, we can go back and forth to this to talk about specific windows. Windows 1, 2, and 3 are at the historic bay, and it's my understanding just before the meeting began that those 3 windows are going to be left intact, the historic windows. So those will remain, those are not being replaced. So the windows that are being discussed to be replaced are windows 4 through 16, and 5 of those windows are located at the rear of the building, which we would have no jurisdiction over. So just to, we don't need to go through the bay, except that these are the historic windows that will be retained and repaired, the interior view of them. And then the south elevation, these are the windows. The first 2 images are the windows at the south. So there's a pair of windows, windows 4 and 5, and then window 6, which is adjacent to the kitchen door at the rear porch. And then there are windows at the east elevation. So again, showing the interiors. I took their photographs and meshed them as well as I could so that you could see the paired windows, so that the window's really not deformed like that. But I wanted to put the 2 windows side by side. The applicant provided individual pictures of each window. So 4 and 5 is a paired window. Window 6 is a single window. Again, going around the exterior, the north elevation at the rear wing is, and the rear window at the east elevation of the main house are both not subject to review, but I wanted you to be able to have a good idea of what all the windows look like. And then, of course, the second floor at the rear has the window there just to the left of the chimney. Whoops, what happened here? So again, I wanted to point out, because of what I discovered this afternoon, that those dormers are probably date to 1922 to 1928. Those windows are, it's possible all the windows were replaced in 1922 to 28, or it could be that just the dormer windows are dating to a different period, but wanted to point that out. Again, the interior views of those windows. And again, this would be windows 15 and 16. Again, the windows are not splayed like that. I just wanted to put them together to show you that they're the paired windows at windows 15 and 16 in the upper south dormer. So, as I said, the applicant has provided a great number of photographs, and I did not really think it was appropriate to try to go through 97 photographs in the screen. So I did put a packet together for each side of the dais, if you want to No, there's just one, you're gonna have to share, because there's 97 images there, and I didn't want to have to print out everything for a few minutes, but that shows all of the conditions at all of the windows throughout the house, and I just wanted to show it because you have viewed many window applications, and we've asked for photographs, and we haven't gotten them. This applicant has provided all the views of the windows and given you details to look at. But I did highlight quite a few of them here on the screen. So just kind of running through some of the typical conditions that have been highlighted. On the left is a view of an interior jamb, and you can see that the rope has been painted over, and the windows are actually painted shut. The upper sash, most of them are painted shut. The middle view shows hardware that's been broken over time, and then the far right image shows some of the damage and some of the deterioration on the inside of the jamb. Again, just some other details showing that there is some deterioration at the interior of the jamb in various forms. There's also some of the sash do not meet tightly, so the windows have become out of line. And then there's several examples you'll see here of bottom views of various sash that do operate that have either worn, and there's significant gaps around the sash that doesn't fit tight to the jamb framing anymore, or that shows signs of some degree of deterioration. And it varies from window to window, so I've tried to show typical examples that show the range of the deterioration of the sash. So this image is all different windows showing how the bottom of the sash is. You can see in the upper left that the sash has several coats of paint, but it's apparently there is some rot that's going up into the sash by the different layers of paint. So there is some noticeable deterioration of some of the sash, and like I said, it varies from minor to pretty severe, depending on which window. Again, some other details showing that some of the windows operate. And then the window that's being proposed is a Pella Reserve traditional precision fit window. It does have a wood interior. They're proposing a clad exterior, and again, these windows are not going to be at the street-facing facade, but will be at the southeast and north facades where they're going to retain the aluminum siding. So with that is an overview of the project, and I know the applicant, Joyce Courtney, is here, and Mike Schmidt from Schmidt Exteriors. If you'd like to go to the podium and go into more detail or explain the product that you're looking at and answer any questions from the commission. And I can go to any slide that you would like to reference.
If you wouldn't mind just saying your name and
Sure.
your, and just your name, okay.
Okay, I'm Joyce Courtney, and I'm the owner of the home. And so, after reviewing everything from the last meeting, we have decided to withdraw the replacement request for siding. And what else we want to do is repair what was taken off. It's out of budget. I can't afford it to do it. We will preserve the front windows. We will not touch those. We just want to replace the siding that the demolition permit you guys had to have me do to take off. So that's all we want to do, is just replace that and then put in new windows on the other sides just to secure the building. It's for economic reasons, it's for winter, it's for security. I mean, my windows can't lock. I'm a place of business. I have legal information, financial information on people, and I can't secure any of the windows. So that would be the goal for the rest of the house, but the front will remain the same.
Does anybody have any questions?
I do. I see on a lot of these photos, apparently there's storm windows on the outside. Okay, will those be, as part of the process, will those remain, or are we?
In the front, they will, because the 3 front windows we are not touching that face
Right.
the street. The other storm windows will not, yeah, go ahead.
Mike Schmidt, Schmidt Exteriors. I'm a Pella Platinum Elite Certified Contractor. Go ahead, George.
Well, I'm just seeing all these latches here, so it looks like there's some kind of after construction application of what appears to be storm and screens on, and the windows aren't designated as to location, but I was just wondering, when you do this, is that all coming out?
Not on the front windows.
I understand. Well,
All
let's-
the other windows.
On all the other ones other than front, you're going to pull off those other storm and screens as
Yes.
well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, over 50% of those are broken.
No, okay. But obviously, they're not 1920s, that they were installed much later.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else? Jewel?
Do you have any documents to show us that would make a comparison between the costs of repairing the windows versus replacement of the windows?
I gave those to you last time.
Okay.
It was significantly more expensive to repair.
Repair.
Could you just give us some idea of what, a comparison of the energy efficiency of the new windows that you're thinking about putting in versus the existing windows on the north, east, and south
The
side?
U value of .28 is very typical. I provided Mike with a Pella breakdown and circled the U values.
The efficiencies meet the local code for U value for the windows. I don't have that, but they meet or exceed the local.
They do
requirement.
exceed
Right.
the .30 U value. So it's like golf, it's the lower number the better. Well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but for general knowledge, the lower the number, the better. Pella is typically 2.8, building code is typically 3.0.
Is there a typical number for the existing windows with a
They're
storm
not even
or?
close, they're at .5, even with the storm windows. They're leaky, they're single pane glass versus the high energy. I think giving them grace, if you will, giving them benefit of the doubt, they'd probably come in at .5 at best.
In the new windows you're proposing, are there two panes or is it?
You
panes
see a
with-
picture of that?
Right.
I'm sorry, Kevin. 2 layers of glass, 2 layers of low E argon gas in between.
Okay.
So the windows that are being replaced, the existing exterior is it wood on the outside, or what is the material of what's in place?
Oh, sorry. The sashes are wood.
Uh,
The frame is aluminum.
Okay. And you're proposing that they be replaced with an aluminum exterior? The Pella window? What is the exterior of those windows, the material?
Right now, we were hoping we could do the aluminum, all aluminum sash and frame on the side and rear. We could, boy, I'm going to get into the weeds here.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's been a moving target and how this project was going to be addressed. When they were talking about doing the whole thing, we were going to use an all-wood window. Now, the precision fit an all-wood window minimum is 4 9/16 jamb.
Mm-hmm.
A replacement, a pocket precision fit window is a 3 11/16 jamb. That allows me to put that in without disturbing inside or outside. So I'm locked into that solution now. That's why we took the front windows off of the table.
Was that just to manage your budget and by removing the front windows from the project? And now we're talking about a different product because you can maybe play around with the materials a little bit more? Is that what
Yes.
you're saying? Okay.
Yes. So precision fit goes into the existing jam. You lose no glass. I did the math on it. It's like 1/8 of an inch. You know, who's going to know that?
So, Michael, so this is before us because you can see the windows from the sides of the house, from the street, is that it?
It's before you for two reasons. You received it last month as an application. It's been
Sure.
revised, and so it needs to
Sure.
be brought back to you as a revision, because I can't just approve it once you've seen it.
Okay.
But also because you can see the north and south. The north is more prominently visible than the south, but you can see the north and south elevations from the public sidewalk.
Okay.
If I may jump in, just because I think Commissioner Jensen asked a question, I do have those numbers in front of me. In case you don't remember from last month, the window proposal was running around $5,000 for the new windows versus they did a partial estimate for the replacement and repair, and they stopped when it got to be $13,805, just to give you those numbers, because I did have those.
I have a few questions on that. So quickly, on that number, Michael, that you just gave, does that include exterior storm windows?
No storm windows on these products.
But if the existing windows were repaired and there were storm windows
That
installed?
does not include the storm windows.
Okay, okay.
That was on their information last
So-
month.
Right.
Is there any way we can find out the number? I've been told different numbers. With your existing windows, with storms, with storm windows, I've been told that number is the same as a new efficient windows. You come up with .28, right, on the Pella? I mean, I'm just saying I have a historical myself, and I've been told numerous times that in my existing window, single pane, rope, same window, and a storm window has the same efficiency as a new window. I mean, Michael, has anyone been presented with any of those numbers to the commission?
There have been a lot of window studies that have demonstrated that, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. So if you read through the window studies, they have been able to make a single pane window with a storm panel become very close or exceed a modern replacement window. The factors to that also include weather stripping, caulking, and make sure the entire assembly is sealed like a new window would be. So again, if you're trying to look at just the numbers of repair and a new storm window, there's more labor that goes into it that would have to be calculated in to get those numbers to be apples for apples. But it has been demonstrated that in many times and in many historic communities that a storm window and window restoration can become as energy efficient as a new window. But it's not, I just want to be clear, there's other things that need to be done besides just a storm window
And I kind of have two issues with, so you would take and restore, an old window, which is expensive, and cover it with a new aluminum storm window. To me, that doesn't make sense.
Well, I don't know that, based on those photographs, I don't know that it's worth the restoration, just to the retention of the material. It looks like the material
Right.
itself is
Well,
pretty
Right.
big state of disrepair.
Most of it is highly rotted, and when I had my guy over there who would do the window restoration, he was honestly guessing because so many of the windows are painted shut and there are so many rotted. He didn't even know if, came back and said that some of the storms, he didn't even know that can be produced to match them and what the cost would be for those. So it's just, and he said some of them are just so bad that it's almost non-restorable.
And Commissioner Harvey, if I can answer your question also, why would you spend the money to restore a wood window and then put an aluminum storm window over it? One of the charges of the commission is to preserve authentic materials. So if a window can be restored, and it can be made more energy efficient with a modern component added to it that you could remove in the future and not alter or significantly alter the opening or the original materials, that's an acceptable approach under the Secretary of Interior standards. So even though it may seem counterintuitive to restore a window and then put a storm over it, it does follow what the Secretary of Interior standards intent is, and that is to preserve the authentic materials and then protect those materials.
Okay. I mean,
That was why I asked though how old those storm windows were. Because I see the latches on them, if they're 70s or 80s, are they worth even preserving?
Well, storm windows we have no control over. There's no permit required for storm windows to be installed or removed.
Okay.
So what the request is about the physical permanent window.
Right.
The operable double hung window is what the request is. What they do with the storm windows or not really is beyond the control of this commission because we do not require a permit for them.
Okay. So we're really just evaluating whether we believe that those windows could be restored, and if they cannot be restored, then they need to be replaced in kind, if that's possible. Meaning that it would be, the existing windows in question are wood with, you said, an aluminum cladding?
Aluminum master frame,
Yeah,
wood sashes.
yeah.
Plan A would be a request to have the sashes with aluminum, since they're on the sides and the rear.
Right, yeah.
Plan B is, if that's not acceptable to the board, then we could do the sashes, the frames still ultimately are aluminum. And do the sashes in the wood to be painted in my commercial paint shop, in my warehouse, before they come here, or before they're applied.
and would the exteriors be clad and the interior be painted or all painted?
The sashes would be all wood,
Okay.
in and out, painted. The exterior grade latex on the outside with semi-gloss interior latex on the inside.
So how does that qualify, the existing versus, and I'm looking to you and asking you, sort of help me interpret what the commission might be considering here. Would we be considering something that was of a mixed material like that, or would we be considering to be all clad? Would we, or an all-wood window? But the existing isn't an all-wood assembly, so.
The existing is an all-wood assembly. I'm thinking there's 3 or 4 things getting confused here. So the existing is an all-wood assembly. It's a historic window that goes back to at least 1928, maybe earlier.
Okay.
The preference of the applicant is to do an aluminum-clad replacement window on the sides and the rear. And again, the rear is kind of out of play because we have no review. They can do whatever they want on the rear of the building. So we're really talking the north and south sides. What Mr. Schmidt has offered is there is an alternate that if the clad is not acceptable on the sides, which they're requesting to retain the aluminum siding, so it's going to be a clad siding with a clad window is what their preference is. But Mr. Schmidt is offering that there's an option to do an aluminum jamb, so what holds the sash in place, with a wood sash. That's not what the applicant is requesting, but Mr. Schmidt is saying that is an alternate if the commission has a problem with the aluminum.
So what is the deterrent in not, why wouldn't we just, why is, Mr. Schmidt, why are you not presenting that wood window as the primary presentation, or as a primary option? Is it just a budget thing?
A budget thing, yes, because it has to go through the process at the shop. It adds dollars.
Gotcha. I see. Okay.
Michael, could you put your little chart up on there on which windows we're talking about?
Can I just ask a question while Michael's finding that?
Thank you.
So if you were to do a wood sash, it would be more expensive
Yes.
then? Okay.
We are talking about windows 4, 5, 15, 16, 11, 13, and 14. 4, 5, 15, 16, and then 11, 13, 14.
Okay,
The north and
The
south.
north and south windows.
that's it.
Hey,
Nothing
hey,
in the
Michael,
back
can you
there,
bring up
nothing in the
that,
front.
Windows 6 through 10 and plus 12 are all in the rear of the building that we, again, do not have any review authority over, so they could do whatever they would like there.
So those windows would be all aluminum clad and everything and such. And so then 4, 5, 15, 16, 11, 13, 14 could be either the aluminum clad that would match 9, 10, 12, 7, and 8, or would have wood.
A wood sash.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the front windows, 1, 2, and 3 are staying
Yes,
And that's
as is.
existing.
correct.
hey, Michael, can you bring up the detail of how the window works in the sash, the existing sash? You had a plan detail of that.
Do you hear him?
Yeah, he was, how the existing window operates.
So the, I still can't see it, but that's fine, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I have a comment. I mean, to me, on the sides, it doesn't really make sense to put a wood sash. I mean, the existing siding and everything else is clad. I mean, you might as well go with clad sashes. I mean, and so with this pallet pocket window, that pocket window is, you pull the stop off on the inside and you slide that in. My question would be, so no trim is affected on the inside or outside, obviously with a pocket window?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought some of that was shot, though, based on you said the ropes are painted over, so there's window weights in some of those, or some kind of, you're just installing these over potentially rotten jams?
That is what happens when you do a precision fit window, George.
Well, I understand, but are the
Yeah.
openings even square anymore?
Well, I order the windows usually within a quarter inch of
Okay,
to allow
yeah.
me to,
Yeah, well, I mean, some of them,
Brown.
Michael's pictures were kind of, but when I looked
Right.
at those, I got a little, if the jams are shot and the openings aren't, well, that's your end, not my end anyway, so, yeah, you know more about it than I do, so, I withdraw the question.
Does anybody have any more questions, comments?
Well, just to clarify, so there's two things that are before you. One is the window request. So if you want to take a vote on that, that's fine. The other is, staff really will need some direction on what to do with the request about the aluminum siding, because the siding policy says, once aluminum siding is removed, it cannot be put back on, and we've held we've held consistent on that throughout the historic district. They removed it to expose the wood siding to see what the condition of it was and what could be done. Joyce Courtney, the applicant now, is asking for relief from the siding policy to put aluminum siding back on where it's been removed, and that does go against our adopted siding policy. So, again, that's a pretty big policy issue for you guys to discuss. So I want to make sure you understand there's two things that you need to address here.
I don't see that here on, as part of the agenda.
either.
It's not on the agenda, it's what's come out of the, out of the revised request.
Okay.
So that's what, Joyce said that in her opening remarks, that they would like to
Correct.
put the siding back on.
Correct.
So I just want to
And-
make sure everybody heard that.
And in reality, I don't know what the square feet is, but it's the very front and the very one side of the bay, and then the very north-facing edge of the porch. And and the gable area. But my other comment is, too, if I was told that I had to have this demoed, so we did, and had I known that if I demo it, I could never put it back on, I don't think I would have ever taken it off. I would have just said, forget it. Because as a business, this is not my home, but I want to preserve the look in town. I can't have the expense to do that. So that's why I just want to repair what was taken off on those 3 areas.
So is what I'm looking at, these photographs, of roughly the estimated square foot or?
Yes, yes,
or square?
yes, you're correct, Don. There's nothing else, because on the right-hand side, if you look all the way to the right where the hydrangea is, that was not removed.
And that is original siding?
It is the aluminum siding that was put on at some point, way
Well,
before I
the-
bought it.
Rephrase that. So the existing siding I'm looking at on the house, that's wood, that's the original siding?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Michael, should we do the windows first and then not get into this discussion, right? You know, they're kind of getting blended.
Right, I just want to make sure you have. You have 2 issues that
I
we
got it.
need resolution on.
Well,
Okay.
I, for one, agree that the windows need to be replaced. So based on the photographs that I see, it sounds like there needs to be something new that is put in its place. The question then becomes, what is the material? To me, it's what's the material? And I feel like if it's wood now, then it probably needs to stay wood.
On the outside, it's not wood on the outside,
It's a wood sash.
right?
Yeah, it is all wood with an aluminum storm window.
Correct, right now.
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying if the existing window is a wood window, then our goals are to replace it in kind with the same type of material. If it's a historic and notable material, then we need to keep it that way.
Then my comment would be, how much of that's why we withdrew the front windows.
Correct,
To relieve the pressure from that point.
correct. Which
So
is-
you're saying, well, and I'm just saying because anything that falls before this commission is anything that you can see from the street. So the 3 front windows you can see from the street, you can also see the side windows from the street, and so that's why it's still before us, and we still have the same obligation. This is just me talking, but that's what I think.
Are the current sashes exterior clad in wood or aluminum?
They're wood. Exterior, the current windows are wood on the outside, covered with an aluminum storm window.
Got it.
And a lot of Bondo.
Yeah. There you go.
I also don't want to have a building that has 3 different types of windows on it. We're just ruining the image of it. It has to be consistent. And so if that's what I'm doing in the back, I want to do the same thing on the sides. And that's why I withdrew the request to do it in the front. You can't have this hodgepodge of how this is going to look. It's going to look terrible.
Well, it would have been a hodgepodge regardless, because you would have had the wood windows in the front and aluminum around. If it's, we're just saying, or I'm saying, that from what we can see, it needs to be the same material. But you were also thinking about keeping the wood in place in the front and then doing aluminum in the other one. So I think that the same condition exists, whether
There's only one window on the north side that you can really see. Pardon?
There's also the 2 on the dormer. There's one of the. main front that's-
upstairs.
Right, just.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anybody else on the commission agree with that stance about maintaining wood for wood?
Yes, and that would basically go against the comment I made earlier about aluminum, with aluminum clad exterior. But I agree with your comments, Lisa, of a wood sash, a complete wood sash.
Right. George?
The only issue with that is the frame that's going in is still gonna be aluminum. It's just the sash will be wood. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The insert would be aluminum, but the sash, but you'd see very little of the insert, but still be there.
Michael, historically, in these situations, what has been the determination? Is it commonplace to take out a historic wood window and put an aluminum one in its place, precedent-wise?
We have allowed a clad unit to replace a historic wood window that was beyond salvage, that was determined to be beyond salvage. So that has been done throughout the historic district.
Okay,
We have allowed that.
yeah.
Well, considering now as well, I'm back to, I can't let those storm windows go. You don't even see, and we haven't for decades seen wood sash windows on the sides because of the storms.
Correct. Correct.
So if we're trying to preserve an image, it really gets more clouded than normal.
Yeah.
Because we have two different images. We have the image with and without the storms, and we don't know the dates on those.
Right.
So that would seem to me to open the door for cladding more than not.
But as Lisa kind of explained to me, wood for wood,
I mean, that's part of the standards, right? The standards state that we're supposed to consider that if something if something is beyond repair, then we should consider it in the material in which it was originally made. However, if there's precedent within the Geneva Historic District to replace an old unsalvageable window with one that is aluminum cladding, then it doesn't seem like an unreasonable request to keep that going.
I also think
Yes,
that, since you've got a window that's going to be aluminum cladded with aluminum siding around it,
Right.
I think in a way, you're not going to really notice a wooden sash on it because you're going to see this expanse of aluminum there. Plus, at the same time, the owner, for cost reasons, is going to want to put the aluminum cladded windows in the back that are out of our jurisdiction anyway. So to keep consistency, and being that the primary historic windows in the front are going to be maintained, I don't have an issue with going all aluminum, with going with the aluminum sashes
If I
for a
can,
consistency basis.
you've asked what the standards or what practice has been. And I think that Commissioner Staes brought up a good point, so that's why I wanted to bring up these two images. If you look at the sides of the building from the public sidewalk right now, what you see is a non-historic storm window. You don't see the recess of the window, you don't see the shadow lines of the window. So this is where the commission has to make these tough calls and these compromise calls. So going back to some of the points you've made throughout the discussion is the historic appearance of having that recessed window and the shadow line more authentic to the historic character of the architecture?
Yes.
Or is the material covered by a storm window more important because of material? Now, the standards kind of, again, they were designed to be vague, to make, to give you some flexibility for each case, and here you've got a case where you've got a one versus the other, and neither one is going to be 100% correct as far as pure preservation, but this is a compromise situation that's being set up. So again, I think this view is something you should all look at a little bit and decide if the appearance of a window in another plane is more important, or can you see the material well enough from the sidewalk that the material becomes the overriding factor? And that's really, I think, the question you're struggling with.
Well, and I think that after kind of talking this through, it seems, well, first of all, these aren't those front three windows where maybe you might see those features more. So if we're looking at windows that are in maybe a secondary position as far as hierarchy in the structure, then I think maybe if there's precedent for having done this in past projects, I don't want to start paving the way for something that will start a trend of things that are taking away from historic pieces. So if there's a precedent for it, I think it's a reasonable thing to allow for that exterior aluminum cladding on those secondary windows.
And I would just like to say that this is one reason why I'm always encouraging you to be very clear in your discussions and clear in your motions, because if the record is clear why you made a decision at a particular case, it helps guide future cases that may appear to be similar but may have different factors.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with the applicant too, that, you know, having 3 different types of windows on the building probably is not, you know, the best thing. So, you know, as a trade-off for restoring those 3 bay windows, I think it's, you know, to me, it's acceptable to include the aluminum clad wood replacement windows on the other 3 sides. Because I don't think you're really going to, you know, forget about the storms for the moment, but you're not going to see much of a difference from the street.
Right. Right. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments? So, Michael, we also, as part of this, need to discuss the siding on the front, or is that something separate?
I think it should be separate.
I think you can make a motion on the request for the windows, and I think that we need direction of, I think we can just take direction on the siding issue.
Okay.
Because again, I'm not sure it requires a motion, but I definitely want to know what the commission's direction is in this case.
Okay. Well, so does anybody want to make a motion?
Sure. I approve, I propose that we approve replacement with aluminum-clad windows on the sides. Do we need to enumerate the specific windows, Michael, or not?
Just north and south, maybe?
Just
North and
north
south.
of-
North and south elevations.
Okay, replacement with aluminum-clad windows, north and south on 1892. What's the address on that?
15 South. Says-
Oh, what's the, okay, 16 South, 15 South Sixth Street.
Second.
So we want to do a roll, or all those in favor? Roll call, please.
Hartman,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
McManus,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Solomon,
Aye.
Stazen,
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye.
All right.
Excuse me, Lisa, can I just make some comments on the windows? I wanted to make it after the vote. I live at a home and I have 3 different style windows that someone else has installed. On the street-facing side, I had thermopane wood storm windows made by myself. I'm a carpenter. They weren't cheap, and that was me doing it. I just can appreciate the labor involved in, you know, what has to be done to restore those. I mean, it's a shame they've gotten to that point, you know, for time for whatever reason, but I can certainly be empathetic towards the 3 different windows. You know, it's not a good look. It's not a good look at all. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
And then separately, what are we doing regarding the siding, Michael? Are we just sort of discussing, because it's not a motion, it's not something that we're voting on, for sure.
Well, I think I want to understand where the commission is on it, so if you want to take a vote, you certainly could take a vote. But again, the siding policy, I do want to correct one thing, and I'm not, I don't know if, Joyce, if you were standing next to Jeff and I when we talked about the siding removal, but I was very clear that if it was removed, it would have to remain off. When I was talking with
No,
Jeff on
I
the
was, I was
Yeah,
not.
so I know that there were several people moving around.
Yeah.
But when I did speak to your siding contractor who was originally proposing that, I said, if you remove siding, and that's why I'd recommend maybe taking 3-foot sections off, because we've allowed 3-foot sections back, and I was actually kind of surprised when I came and saw the whole front removed. But it did show us what the siding was like. So it was stated to the siding contractor, who's not here this evening, that if they, whatever they removed could not be put back in place.
I did not hear that, Michael.
And like I said, I know there were several people
yeah.
moving about, so you may
Yeah.
not have heard that.
Yeah, because I would have told him, don't do it.
Right. So what we've got is, we have, two sides of a bay and one side of a porch exposed on the front elevation plus the gable. And our siding policy clearly says that aluminum siding or vinyl siding cannot be installed or reinstalled in the historic district. I have met with 4 other people, all about siding replacement. One of them is right across the street from this house practically. And in every case, I always make sure I tell people, if you remove siding, and I suggest removing it from a rear corner, because we did look at your rear corner where the ants were, a rear corner or an indiscreet side, because in those areas, we've allowed a small little 3-foot patch or whatever to go back in place. But here we have a historic front now exposed, and installing new siding will add new nail holes to the historic wood siding. So it's really a tough situation. I certainly understand where Joyce Courtney is coming from as far as expense, but it does violate what the siding policy says, and there is the threat of damaging the historic siding even further by reinstalling new siding over it. So I know that's not giving anybody a clear answer of what you should be doing, but that's why I'm asking as staff to have very clear understanding what direction the commission is giving me, so I follow what you are wanting to do in this particular instance with this particular set of circumstances.
How bad is the siding? Is it repairable? I mean, it's how many square feet are you talking about here? It's not a very big, it's that front elevation, right? 2 sides of the bay, that side of the porch
Yeah.
leading to the
It's
door,
very,
right?
it's a minor amount.
George,
Well-
microphone.
Could it be restored then?
But do you want to have that wood restored with all the rest aluminum in the front?
Well, it's historic on the front elevation, which
But
is,
it wouldn't be on the other side of the porch or the
I
other side of
understand
the
that.
bay.
I could live with that if the ordinance says that you can't put the siding back. I could, because it demonstrates the original character if it is repairable. Now, I don't know what the overall condition is. I mean, I've seen the photos. I haven't inspected the project like you did, Michael, but I mean, if it's some patching holes and painting, the wood does not look like it has significant deterioration.
Again, I'm not a painting contractor or a carpenter, but I would say compared to other projects in the historic district that have restored or repaired their siding, that the siding on this house is in much better shape than
Well,
most of the
that's
ones
what
we've
it
seen.
looked like from the photos, so I would entertain that, I would like to probably see it repaired.
I don't disagree with George. I was thinking the same thing. The problem is, and I understand where you're coming from,
Two different.
is that, in the past, we've been very firm as to regarding siding and to allow us to set a precedent. And that's what this all boils down to, is setting a precedent. And as Michael said, is that in many cases before, they'll take off a couple of feet of siding just to take a peeky underneath to see what's going on, not a whole wall's worth and around the front. And, other, people in the areas that, that'll come after this fact, will point back to situations, not just with siding, but with other things that have been done with roof rails and other things that, hey, you let this one get out, do this, and this one, this, and that's where we gotta be careful. I concur with George. I think that the easiest solution here, because I agree, I don't think the original siding looks like it's in that bad a shape. It's all white anyway. And even though you've got aluminum and such, if it's properly maintained and preserved and painted, I don't think it's going to be too much of a difference. I personally would not allow the aluminum siding to go back up again because it's such an extensive amount that's going up compared to what we would allow in the past.
And if I may add, if there's a reasonable shadow line or transition point, aesthetically, I think you can pull it off. I mean, obviously, if you had a flat elevation and you abruptly transitioned from wood to, it would probably stick out. But there's a lot of angles on that. I think you could pull it off.
I think that brings up a point, though, because the south side of the bay still has the aluminum.
You
So
may have to take it a little.
I think maybe that, if the answer is to just repaint the siding, the wood siding is, patch the holes or whatever, repaint that. I would recommend that siding on the south end of the bay, the aluminum siding, come off, and that side also be repainted. So there's at least some consistency
Yeah,
in the
homogeneous
look
elevation,
in the
yes.
bay window there.
I'd agree.
And I would strongly, resist putting aluminum back up on the
Right.
gable.
Right.
So
Oh, yeah.
I have a question.
I-
Do we know what is your exposure on the original siding with the aluminum? Is it 3 inches to the weather? Or maybe rephrase that, is it 4 inch on the aluminum? Do you know that?
I happen to know it's about 3.
On the aluminum?
Wood.
On the existing?
No, the aluminum's double 4.
Okay, so it's 4.
Yeah, the original siding is 3.
So it's pretty darn close.
So, what are your thoughts on not putting the aluminum siding back on? Because it wouldn't be consistent with the rest of the home, or is it expense, or?
It's an expense. So it's to restore the boards, which the boards are not easy to find, the clear cedar type of boards, and then taking it off again on the south side of the bay and the other part. It's just adding to the cost. And again, yes, and there's also removal of the paint. So the cost is very prohibitive with that. And so, again, what happened, but I was not told that if the siding came off, it couldn't be put back on. So I think part of this is the fact that I was not given that information, and again, I would not have allowed that siding to be removed in that much of an extent. So now, I don't know how many square feet that is, 50 square feet, 100 square feet?
It's about 200,
About 200 square feet
250.
is just to put it back on because of cost prohibitive expenses. I'm trying to preserve the building. The roof needs replacement, obviously the windows need replacement. So then to tear all the rest of that off, so I don't want it to also look, I don't know what the right word is, hodgepodge, where you have aluminum, wood, aluminum. It just doesn't look right. It's kind of like the windows, where you have 3 different types of windows.
You only have 2 different types of windows now.
Well, true. But I'm just saying, how many of your houses are in the front, half aluminum, half wood? I mean, it doesn't look right.
I understand that, but that wasn't our call to take off the aluminum siding.
It wasn't mine either.
We didn't take it off.
No, but was told to take it off, and I didn't know if that much was taken off, that it couldn't be put back on. I was not told.
But your contractor was.
Yes, that's what Michael
So that
said.
is not our issue.
So I have to pay for that expense?
Well, you're not listening to what I was saying before, is that any change of our way of our citing code is setting a precedent. Our precedent has been in the past that if a couple of pieces are taken off and we see that, there's a problem underneath, whatever, they can be reinstalled. Not taking off the whole side of a house. Okay? And so, that's what we are here to work by the rules that we have for our citing code, and at the same time, not to set a precedent for down the road where, okay, well, you let so-and-so put 3 walls worth of siding back on, I'm only wanting to do 4, and then it becomes 5, Our rules are very specific, okay? And the thing is that I have the utmost faith in Michael that it was communicated properly to the person who was going to be removing that siding.
Oh, I have no doubt he told him. I just
Okay.
wasn't there.
That's not our problem. That's communication with you and your contractor problem, okay? So I understand where you're coming from. I also think that this commission also made a nice little gesture on the windows, okay? Taking into account having a hodgepodge, not having wooden sashes, and being able to continue with the aluminum sashes, okay? So, and once again, this is something that we have not, this was just dropped on our doorstep when you came here today. We didn't know about this because this was not part of the original package. So I understand what you're saying, but we also have rules to follow too.
Well, and that's why I asked too about the condition of that. I can't, I'd be very surprised if 200 square feet for patching, paint removal and repainting, I don't know how many boards need to be replaced versus 200 square foot of residing, then you'll redo flashing, trim, whatever, the differential cost-wise would be that much. I'd have to see 2 estimates to really, we don't want to impose, at least I don't, any undue expense, but we do have issues about procedure. And secondly, and aesthetically, I'm not worried about it at all at this point in time. So I don't think the advice is that unreasonable.
And also, I know at the last meeting, you had mentioned that your insurance company was reluctant to help with any payment with the restoration of the historic
They will
siding.
pay for replacement.
They will pay for a replacement?
Replacement of siding.
Okay.
Yeah, of what was, yes,
The aluminum.
correct. Or if we were, and this is off the table, but if originally we were talking about going to hardy board, that's off the table.
So when if they were to restore or repaint that original siding, do they have to take the paint off down to bare wood?
There's nothing requiring to go to bare wood. It would have to be, whatever the contractor would stand behind for guaranteeing his work would be
Right.
what would be the expectation.
Yeah, just, to me, it looks like it's not that in bad a shape that it couldn't be repainted.
I think it's hard to tell from these pictures when you see it up front how it's chipped and cracked throughout. I don't think you can just paint right over that.
Well, I'm sure you'd have to do some type of prep work to.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think maybe a lot of the cost that you were talking about is associated with stripping all that lead paint off of there and, well, how that, increases the cost. I'm just curious if, stripping all of that lead paint is actually required.
I'd have to ask the contractor.
And maybe there's a, more financially feasible way to keep that wood siding without, incurring a lot of lead abatement costs and.
Well, if it's still bonding, you could use a filler primer and encapsulate rather than remove, which is always another option but I'm not doing it.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes, comment, George.
So what are we doing here today? I mean, there's,
Is there a motion required for this citing issue?
You can certainly make a motion I mean, that would be the cleanest way to record the action of the commission, just through a motion.
does anybody want
I
to
mean,
make a motion?
oftentimes, if it's a small issue, I will take just a verbal affirmation
Okay.
from the commission, but I think as
Okay.
Commissioner Salomon has pointed out, this is a precedent type of action, so I would think a motion would be in order.
Well, then I will move that, recommend that the owner investigate the option of retaining the wood siding and reconditioning it in a fashion, do we want to say recondition? Let me think about this. I want to be specific.
Refinish?
Yeah, refinish, recondition the existing wood siding in lieu of reapplying the aluminum, which does not conform to our guidelines.
I would second that motion.
Clarification, are you asking for them to come back on the siding issue then before the commission with that information then?
With the cost.
No, not
Who's making that determination?
necessarily. That would be the motion to pursue that avenue rather than restoring, rather than doing aluminum.
Bring that up tonight.
At 15 South Sixth Street.
At 15 South Sixth Street, thank you.
Anybody want to second that?
They can stand.
Yeah, would second that.
No.
Okay. Should we call roll?
I just have one question.
Yes.
You're saying that aluminum siding on the bay window could be retained and should be retained?
I'll leave that to the discretion of the owner with their design team. If there's a real concern about, a clash between two elements, peel a little bit more off, sure, to the next shadow line, but,
But then that also would need to be retained and refinished.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so are we,
Which that would be my preference because for the
Okay.
consistency.
well,
I mean, I know that might result.
With the hedges, with the photo evidence that I have here, it's hard for me, but if you've seen it, that could be
I mean, there's,
investigated.
yeah, winter views also.
Can we
I mean,
clarify-
I'm just wondering if we
probably up
need,
to their contractor, too.
I'm sorry.
Can
No, I
can we
was just saying that
clarify
would be
that
up to their
motion?
contractor.
Can we clarify the motion is for, to deny.
Restoration
to-
of existing wood finish in lieu of applying new aluminum siding, which is contrary to our guidelines.
Yes, okay, thank you.
That's succinctly probably the best way to say it, and at 15 South Sixth Street.
Right, and then we were looking for someone to second that, and
Don already did.
I did.
Don already
Yeah.
did. Okay, and then we are going to call roll for that, yes, Michael?
Yes.
Well, and we could add with, as a clarification, with further examination.
But that doesn't make sense, what you're saying, George.
It doesn't?
Well, I mean, if we're denying it with an exception,
No, we're saying you could expand it,
oh, okay, I understand.
further removal
Yes, I get it.
as
Right,
described.
I understand.
And if I knew the specific location.
Yes.
So if you want to add that, we could add that as a caveat to that motion.
Meaning that if there were more removed, it would still need to be preserved.
Right.
What's
Oh,
underneath.
definitely,
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
For aesthetic reasons.
For aesthetic reasons, yes.
Thank you.
Precedent.
And then should we also include something about the gable? You're not, are you,
Oh, I'd include the
Gable
the
window.
gable for sure, yes.
no,
I
don't
think-
replace the aluminum
No.
mat there.
All right.
Hartman,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
McManus,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Solomon,
Aye.
Stazen,
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye.
All right.
So just to clarify, just again to remind you what the siding policy says, that if they proceed with the historic siding, restoring the historic siding, just so you know, if it's less than 10%, it doesn't require any permit. That is considered.
I'm sorry, can you start again?
Sure. So if you're restoring the wood siding, if that's where it goes, if it's less than 10% of material replacement, that does not require a permit. If it's 10% to 25% replacement required on whatever's exposed and this remains, then that is a staff review. But if it turns out there's more than 25%, it will be coming back to this commission for approval. Does that make sense, Joyce?
I think so. So you're saying if I have to restore the bay and that one side, I can just do it?
If it's less than 10%, yes. And we'll work together on that.
But from your observation, you don't think that'll be an issue?
I don't think there's 10% replacement, but again, that was from being on the site a couple of times.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next item on our agenda is an application for replacement of a non-historic front door at an enclosed porch at a contributing property at 302 South 3rd Street.
Thank you. So the property at 302 South 3rd Street is also located in the Central Geneva Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And the property sits in the lower 25% of the local Geneva Historic District. For those of you who've been on the commission for more than a year, you recognize that this project came before us approximately 1 year ago, actually in September of 2022, for a replacement of the porch and some other minor repair at the front entryway. And at that time, commissioners asked about whether the door was being replaced or not, and at that time, they were not replacing the door. The proposal is to replace the existing wood door with a steel entry door, again, of the same configuration with a full light clear glass panel, whoops, and where's that view? Oh, there it is, okay. So you can see on the far right side, it was covered up by something on my screen. The far right side, you can see the condition of the door, which I think is an example of how many people go through that door on a regular basis. It's shown significant deterioration and wear. So it's really, the only reason this is coming to the commission is because it is a front door, and I cannot approve front doors on contributing or significant properties. It has to be approved by the commission. So with that, if the applicants would like to come forward and add any additional information or answer any questions of the commission, the lectern is yours.
How's everybody doing? My name is Dave Gerler. I'm the owner of Next Wave Construction, and we were contacted by Graham's Chocolate because clearly they are in dire need of a new front door. It is seal failure. The bottom of the door is also rotting as well. The new door that we're proposing, it is 20 gauge steel. We would be replacing the frame and all components of the door. And in addition to that, the frame would also have a 20 gauge steel security plate in it, built right in. So not only would it look as though it was the original door to the untrained eye, but also it would add a sense of security on it as well. It comes with a complete lifetime warranty from Provia, and so that way, from now, 20, 25, 30 years from now, If there are any issues with the door, it would just be covered and replaced.
Do you have, do we have an image of what's being replaced, with the replacement door? Oh, sorry, it's been a long day.
So, the transom on top of the door, and the door in of itself are configured as one unit. So the frame, everything is being replaced. So that way, again, with all the traffic that they do have, because I'm a frequent customer myself, as you can tell, they need something that's a lot more reliable and seals a lot better and is a lot more secure as well, too.
Okay.
Is this also a city permitting issue, or is that only on residential entry doors?
It requires a building permit. It will be reviewed by the building department after our review.
Okay. So as far as our value and all that other, that's in the city permitting process.
Our value, hardware, thresholds, all those things are reviewed
So
by the
ours
building.
is aesthetic only,
Correct.
okay? And it's non-conforming to begin with, so, thanks.
It's been great listening to everybody talk tonight, let me tell you. Learned a lot.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here, and thank you for waiting so long to
Yeah.
get your chance to speak. But after reviewing Michael's good report, I mean, it meets all of the design guidelines for historic properties. It meets the review for the SOI standards, so I don't know really what else to talk about other than, so sorry you had to wait for 2 hours to get up there.
When you guys were going through the docket, I was like, oh, wait, and now we've hit the slow mark, so it's okay. Shodine not getting it, so there's that.
Not yet.
So, well, because this is a non-historic door in the first place, it sort of opens up the opportunity to have another, just matching it in kind, and I don't have any issue with what's being proposed here.
I'm cool.
Yeah. Does anybody, I mean, I feel like, should we talk about it some more, or?
No.
All right, well, does someone want to make a motion?
I move we approve the door as submitted for 302 South 3rd Street, exterior door.
I second.
Do we want to do a roll call?
Hartman,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
McManus,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Solomon,
Aye.
Stazen,
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye.
All right, so that has passed.
Rock and roll.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, Secretary's report, anything?
I only have a very brief report. I just want to let you know that I promised last month I would start doing this, but I have approved on your behalf 10 permits for minor work in the historic district, and have also been monitoring 3 or 4 projects that are ongoing. If you have not been by the house at 522 Franklin Street, you will see that it has been recited mostly, and we will be seeing a porch proposal for that coming in shortly. But have been working with several projects that are ongoing, so I just wanted to know there is other work that's going on your behalf besides what comes to this commission.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any new business from the commission?
5-minute field guide, you're really
Yeah.
pissing me off.
It's going to be here in the fall, right?
Watch for new, better, more exciting 5-minute field guides
New and improved.
starting
Blah,
this
blah,
fall.
blah, blah.
The writer's strike is causing a problem,
Oh,
George.
you're SAG? Okay, that's different.
Sure, I always take a
Take
recommendation for 5-minute field guides.
Very good. All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
I actually have one that is very meaty that I didn't think was appropriate for tonight.
I do have something. At the library, I think it's in September, I'm not sure, but they are doing a presentation on the Sears homes in the Chicago area.
The catalog homes?
The catalog homes. In September at the Geneva Library. I don't know the date, I don't know the time, but it's at the library.
Are there any in Geneva?
Yes.
Yes, there are a few
Yes.
Sears homes in
Really?
Geneva, yes.
Really?
More on the east side, actually.
Okay.
And I think one was just plaqued on Richard Street. That's a Sears home.
Okay. The more you know. Anything from the public? No? All right. So now what do I say?
Move to adjourn?
Okay. Is it-
Second?
Motion made second. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Do I get to bang this gavel?
You do.
Got it.